Hello everyone, welcome to the video. Today the goal is to teach you how to set up permissions with Linux. How to set up permissions whether on Ubuntu or Linux. So we're going to start this class by learning how to create users first and then groups. Then using those users and groups that we have created, then we will what? Assign permissions to them so that you will learn how to assign what? Permissions. So let's say I'm going to create a user called user1. So first let me log on to my Ubuntu. So login. Yep, I'm signed in. So let's see. So to create a user, as if you have watched my previous videos, you will see that you use what? Sudo, then what? The name of the what? The user add, the command what? User add. You can use add user or user add. Okay. So there's a difference between using those two commands. But in this case, we're going to use what? User add. This is the easiest way to do it without having to go through so many command prompts. Okay. /bin. This is the shell that we're going to store the user on. Bash. The name of the user. So our user that we are going to create is what? User1. So once you do this, the user is going to prompt for my password. All right, password has been created. I've created the user. Now let's add a password. To add a password, you type what? Sudo and then what? passwd. Sudo passwd for password, and then the name of the user that you want to assign the password to. And then what's the password you want to assign? Then type it again. And then password has been updated successfully. If you can see, you will see that it's automatically saying that the password has been what? Updated what? Successfully. So we're going to continue. Now we're going to create a group as well. Okay. We're going to create a group as well. But before we can do that, let's verify to see if the user has been what? Created. So you can verify a user by what? Checking the /bin directory. etc/password directory. So let's check the directory. So tail, it's a file. So tail-n and 1/etc and the password file pwd, and you see that if you can see, you will see that the user that we have created has been what? Added. You can see user1 and is there. Okay, so let me increase the size of this so that you guys can see clearly. So as you can see, the user1 that we just created is there. So the next thing that we are going to do is create a group, because we will add in what? Permissions to the users and the group. So to create a group, just the same way, sudo, then what? Group add, then the name of what? The group. So in this case, we just call it a group1 and press enter, and group has been created. Now let's check to see if the group is part of the list. Okay, so we can use the same command for the tail -n 1, then etc, then the group what? File. So you can see group1 has been added as well. All right, so let's also create what? A file. So with this file, we can determine the ownership of this file based on the permissions or the access right to this particular file. So with that, we can use what? Touch to create the file. Okay, so we're going to create a file called my permissions. So it's going to say touch. That's the command we use to create what? A file. Touch my permissions. Okay, That's how you create a file. And we're going to list and see what are the permissions, the current permissions that has been assigned on this particular file. So to do that, you just start with ls as list -l, then the name of what? The file. So as we can see now, we have some permissions that has been given what on this particular file. And as you can see, it has a read write. It also has a read write for the user. Okay, first let me bring you this file so you can take a look and understand how permissions. So usually this is how permissions are assigned. I'm trying to make it bigger so that you guys can see properly. So this is the permission structure of a Linux. Okay, usually it has a read, write, and execute. Read, write, execute. Okay, read is for reading, writing is to allow you to edit and make changes, execute is to like open it and play with it. Okay, but also remember, when you open it, if you observe, they are always what? More than just one. So we have the first 1, 2, 3, second 1, 2, 3, third 1, 2, 3. Each of them is telling you what permission is for what. So the first set is always for what? The user. First set of permission, first read, write, execute is for the user. So in this case, user 1, okay? Then second permission set is always for what? The group. Like let's say the person belongs to a group, you can give the permission to only the group. So that is what the second set is for. So the final set is what? Others. Okay, for others. So this is how the permission structure is like for Linux. Okay, so as you can see, when we open the, let me now show you. When we displayed the permissions for the file that we created called my permissions, you see that it has what? It has a read and write for the user. It also have a read and write for the group, but it has only a read for what? The other. So this is how permissions are like or structured in Linux. Okay, so let's continue to do our lab. All right. Also, there is one other important thing that we need to know. You need to understand that permissions, each of them have what? A numerical value assigned to it. Okay? So the first value is always what? 4. Second write value is what? 2. Execute value is 1. So that makes the complete total of what? 7. So let's say I want to give a user read, write, and execute. That means that the value will be what? 7. If I want to give the group what? Read, write, execute, the value is also going to be what? 7. If I want to give others read, write, and execute, the value is also what? 7. So if I want to give a user only read, write, the value will be what? 6. 4 plus 2 is 6. If I want to give a person only read and execute, that means the value will be what? 5. So this is how you calculate. So when you want to give a permission for a file or to somebody, you have to calculate all of them together. So for example, read, if I want to give the read, write, execute for the file that we just created called my permissions, that means I'm going to use the number what? 777. So if I want to give the user like only read, write permission, that is going to be a 677. So you use these numbers to determine or calculate what? The values for the permission. So the command that we are going to use to change permission is called what? Chmod. Okay, chmod. That's the command that we use to to give what permissions, change mod. So I'm going to now go ahead and perform how to change the permissions with what change mod. Okay, so in this case we're just going to change the permissions for the my permissions file. So let's do that. So to change the permission, we're going to write what change mod, and then what the numerical value associated with the permission. So in this case we want to give we have 760. 760 here means that we are giving the user read, write, execute permission, but the group, we're going to give the group only read, write permission, no execute permission. So you see 4, 2, 1 is 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. Okay, 4 plus 2 is 6. But the last portion for others, we don't want to give others any permission. So that is how you give the permission. So I'm going to do like 760. That means read, write, execute is 7. Then read, write is 6. And others is 0. Remember, each permissions has what? A numerical value to it. Read is always the first one. It has a numerical value of 4. Write is the second one. It has a numerical value of what? 2. And execute, it has a numerical value of what? 1. So if you add them together, 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. So, and the first part is for the user. So read, write, execute for user. The second part, read is what? 4. Execute is what? No, write is what? 2. That is 6. So that means that in this for the group, you are not giving them what? Execute permission. And for others, everything is 0. That means you don't give them any permission. So currently, as you can see, read, write, the permission that we have for my permissions is what? It has read, write for the user. It has a read, write for the what? Group. But it has only read for what? The execute. I mean for the others. So we are going to change that to what? Read, write, execute for user. Read, write for what? The group. And then 0 permission for the what? Execute. Now let's do that. So then the name of the file, my permissions. My permissions, and enter. So these permissions have been what? Added to my permission. Now let's go back and list the permissions. You can just go back by using what? Up arrow key instead of having to type the entire command again. So I'm going to list, and you can see now, if you observe the difference, the first time we listed, we have what? Read, write for user, read, write for group, and read for what? Others. But now we've changed the permissions. We have read, write, execute, read, write, execute for what? The user. Read, write for the group. But then 0, that's why we have dash, 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 dash. 0 permissions for the what? For the others. So that is how you assign what? Permissions. And you see that we've made the changes and it worked. Okay. You can also change permissions using what? The read, write, the RW format. For example, let's say I want to change the read, write for my permission for the user. Okay, so you're going to say change mod again, then what? User, that's the U, equal, then what? Read, write. That means I want the user to have what? A read, write permission. And then you indicate what? The name of the folder or file that you want to what? Put those permissions on. Permissions. And let's go back and list and see what's the difference this time. So you see that we gave what? The user read, write instead of what? Read, write, execute. Okay, before when we gave it 7 was read, write, execute. But in this case, we just gave it what? User is equal to what? RX. No, RW. So you just specify what you want the user to be. That is how you use that. You want to put the user 1 to the group called group 1. To do that, you use what? Sudo and the user mod, then dash ag and group 1 and user 1. This will add the user 1 to group 1. Okay, we all know why we do that. Sometimes we create groups and users, and we add users to certain groups so that we can assign them certain permissions that will reflect on all the members of the group. That is the essence. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is, how do you change ownership of a file? Okay. So for example, right now we want to change the what? Ownership of the file my permissions to group 1. We want to now give ownership. So to change ownership of the file, we just use a command called what? Change on. Chown. Okay. So sudo then chown then what? Group 1 then what? My permissions. We just change the ownership to my permission. So sudo change on group 1 my permissions. We give the ownership to my permission. Now let's give user 1 permissions to the what? To the file. User 1 my permissions, like the give ownership to user 1. Okay, in that case it's going to be sudo then chown then user 1 my permissions, the file. This is how you assign what? Ownership of a file to somebody in Linux. Okay. And the last thing we're going to do is list my permissions to see the permissions. ls-l, where we have it, I will write again my permissions. Okay, as you can see, it says that, okay, if previously, if you go back and just observe, you will see that when we listed the last time, ownership of this file was for Anas Nanjo, that's the group, and then the user also was what? Anas Nanjo. Okay, that's the last time we checked. If you just observe like few commands up, you will see that where you see the permissions listed. For example, the one that said rw-1 Anas Nanjo 0 May 27th, at 11:36 per my permissions. Okay, so this is telling you the ownership that was there before we changed it. Okay, now we change the ownership to who? To group 1 from Anas Nanjo. And we also change the ownership to who? User 1 from Anas Nanjo. So now you see that the users is user 1 and the owner of the group is what? Group 1. After we've changed the ownership. So that is how you change ownership of what? Of a file to other users. So on that note, I would say this lab is complete. And so today we've been able to learn how to create what? Users. We've been able to learn how to create what? Groups. And we've learned how to assign what? Users to a group. We learned how to do that by the user mode, ag command, and group, then the name of the group, and then the name of the user you want to add to the group. That is how you do that. We also learned how to what? Change permissions. The most important part of this class was understanding how permissions are assigned or structured from the user. Then we also have what? Group, and we have what? Others. And knowing the numerical value that is being assigned to each of these read, write, execute. As we know, or we have learned, that read always have what? A numerical value of 4. Write always have a numerical value of what? 2. And then execute has a numerical value of what? 1. So if you add them together, that is 7. So if you want to give a user read, write, you just use what? The number 7. Okay, that's what you do in that order. So if you want to give read, write, execute permissions for users, groups, and others, you just type what? Change mod, then what? The number 777, and then the name of what? The user that you want to give, or that you want to give what? Sorry, and the name of the file that you want to give what? The permissions to, and that order. So thank you so much for watching. If you like the content, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.